The provinces. Provinces, in the sense of fixed territorial units with governors which the Sultan had appointed, probably did not exist in the Ottoman Empire before the last 2 decades of the 14th century. It is, however, probable that in the early years of the empire, Osman, d. circa 1324, and Orhan, circa 1324–62, divided their territory into appanages for their sons, other family members, and their most important followers. The only reference to Osman's division of territory appears in the unreliable Ottoman chronicles of the late 15th century, which remark that he gave the banner, Sanjak, of Karaisar, known as Inanyu, to his son, Orhan, and he gave its army command, Subashilik, to his brother's son, Alp Gunduts. This tale of how Osman shared out land and military command may not be true in detail, but perhaps reflects a reality. The practice of granting appanages and army commands to the ruler's sons acquires a slightly sharper focus. In Byzantine chronicles, John Kanakouzenos names Orhan's brother, Pazarlu, as a commander at the Battle of Pelicanon in 1328. More notably, it was Orhan's eldest son, Suleiman, who led the Turks across the Dardanelles in 1352 to occupy the Byzantine fortress of Simp, and it was with Suleiman that Orhan instructed the emperor to negotiate in his attempt to regain the fortress. It would seem therefore that, until his death in 1357, Suleiman was governor and army commander in the newly acquired Ottoman territory in Thrace. The Greek chronicler and theologian, Gregoras, also notes that, in 1357, Orhan's third son, Halil, had received lands along the Gulf of Izmit from his father, presumably as an appanage. The later name for the district of Bursa, Hudavangir, meaning ruler, suggests that this was the territory belonging to Orhan himself. On this very slender basis, one may perhaps speculate that, by the time of Orhan's death in 1362, it had become customary to allocate land as appanages to Ottoman princes, together perhaps with the leadership of such troops as the land could sustain and other military duties. This was not yet a system of provincial government, and, indeed, at this time, the Ottoman Principality itself was in size not much more than a province. Nonetheless, some of the elements of the later system seem already to be in place. The vignette of Orhan in the early 1330s, which Ibn Battuta offers, suggests that he was at that time a ruler who intervened personally throughout his realm, rather than one who freely delegated authority to local commanders. However, with increasing age and with the increasing size of his principality, he was happy in the 1350s to delegate the conquest and settlement of Thrace to his son Suleiman, who became, in effect, the governor of a western province and Apos. Thus, by the end of Orhan's reign, 2 elements of government seemed to have emerged. One was the delegation of military command, still at this era to the ruler's family. The other was the grant of appanages, which presumably carried with them an obligation to perform military service. These were elements which remained in place in the later system of provincial government. Governors received from the sultans appanages, or confirmation of appanages already held, in return for which they provided military service, commanding the troops of their province on the battlefield. Furthermore, until 1595, sultans continued to send out their sons as provincial governors, although their significance in this role diminished as the empire expanded and they came under closer surveillance. By the late 14th century, there was clearly a need for the formal organization of Ottoman territory, following the conquests between 1362 and 1400 of Murad I, 1362–89, and his son, Bayezid I, 1389–1402. It was probably during the first years of Bayezid's reign that the first 2 administrative provinces of the Ottoman Empire came into being. To the west of the Dardanelles lay Rumelia, Rumeli, comprising all the lands conquered in Europe. To the east lay Anatolia, Anadolu, comprising all the conquests in Asia Minor. With the eastward expansion of Bayezid's realms in the 1390s, a third province, the province of Rum, came into existence, with Amasya as its chief town. This became the seat of government of Bayezid's youngest son, Mehmed I, 1413–21, and was to remain a residence of princely governors until the 16th century. 2 By 1468, with the annexation of the formerly independent Principality of Karaman, there were 4. Mehmed II, 1451–81, appointed a son, Mustafa, as governor of the new province, with his seat at Konya. But the 16th century saw the greatest increase in the number of provinces. This came about largely through the conquests of Selim I, 1512–20, and Suleiman I, 1520–66, which created the need to incorporate the new territory into the structure of the empire, and partly through the reorganization of existing territory. A list dated 1527 shows 8 provinces, with Egypt, Syria, Diyarbakir and Kurdistan added to the original 4. These comprise the conquests of Selim I or, in the case of Kurdistan, the outcome of successful negotiations. This province, however, did not survive as an administrative entity. Suleiman's conquests in eastern Turkey, Iraq and Hungary also resulted in the creation of new provinces. The former Principality of Dulgadir, for example, became an Ottoman province at some time after its annexation in 1522. After the Iranian campaign of 1533-6, the new provinces of Erzurum, Van, Sharazar and Baghdad guarded the frontier with Iran. In 1541 came the creation of the province of Buda from part of the Old Kingdom of Hungary. 3. By 1609, according to the list of Ain Ali, there were 32 provinces. Some of these, such as Tripoli, Cyprus or Tunis, were the spoils of conquest. Others, however, were the products of administrative division. When Suleiman I appointed Hayreddin Barbarossa admiral in 1533, he received the post with the rank of Governor-General of the Islands, a province which the Sultan had created specially for Hayreddin, by detaching districts from the shores and islands of the Aegean which had previously been part of the provinces of Rumelia and Anatolia, and uniting them as an independent province. 4. There were later to be similar changes in Rumelia. In 1580, for example, Bosnia, previously a district of Rumelia, became a province in its own right, presumably in view of its strategically important position on the border with the Habsburgs. Similar considerations led to the creation of the province of Kanissa from the districts adjoining this border fortress, which had fallen to the Ottomans in 1600. 5. In the same period, the annexation of the Rumelian districts on the lower Danube and the Black Sea coast, and their addition to territories between the Danube and the Dnieper, along the Black Sea, created the province of Okakov, Ozi. At the same time, on the southeastern shore of the Black Sea, the province of Trabzon came into being. In the words of Ain Ali, by joining the districts of Trabzon and Batum, and annexing them to Gumus, Hain, and Makkah, a province has been created. The purpose of this reorganization, and especially the creation of the province of Ozi, was presumably to improve the defenses of the Black Sea ports against the Cossacks. Provinces, therefore, came into being initially through conquest, and subsequently through the reorganization of existing Ottoman territory. In the first century of Ottoman expansion, however, conquest did not always entail the annexation of territory. Rather, there was a tendency to keep in place the ruling dynasties of conquered lands and to demand from them an annual tribute and the provision of troops to the Sultan's armies. The position of the Shishmanid Tsars of Bulgaria after about 1370, or of Stephen Lazarevich of Serbia after his acceptance of Ottoman overlordship in the early 1390s, are examples of this kind of arrangement. It was Tsar Shishman's refusal to provide troops from Murad I in 1387 that led to the Sultan's punitive campaign against Bulgaria in the following year, and Stephen Lazarevich's Serbian troops fought in Bayezid's armies at the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396 and the Battle of Ankara in 1402. For the sultans, the vassal principalities served much the same function as directly ruled provinces. They provided treasure and troops. However, despite sometimes linking the dynasties through marriage, or keeping a son of the vassal ruler as a hostage at the Ottoman court, the control of a dynastic principality was less secure than the control of a directly ruled province. From the end of Bayezid I's reign, but more especially from the accession of Mehmed II, it became more usual to appoint Ottoman governors than to rely on vassals. In 1395, for example, Bayezid I executed the last Shishmanid Tsar of Bulgaria, and annexed his realm to the province of Rumelia. The native dynasties did not, however, simply disappear. There was a tendency rather for the sultans to appoint members of deposed dynasties, or at least those who survived the conquest and did not flee, to provincial governorships within the empire, away from their hereditary lands. Thus, for example, the Bavarian captive, Skiltberger, records a certain Shufmans and Apos, obviously a Shishmanid, as the governor of a district of Anatolia, near the Black Sea in 1398. In recording events in western Anatolia, nearly 20 years later, the Greek chronicler, Doukas, noted a governor called Suzmanes, evidently from the same family. Similarly, there are records in the 15th century of members of the Zenevis family, whom Mehmed I, 1413-21, had expelled from Gjirokastar in Albania, 6 serving as Ottoman provincial governors. 7 in 1461. Mehmed II expelled the last of the Isfandiarid dynasty from Sinop, awarding him lands near Bursa in exchange for his hereditary territory. 8 The Isfandiarid Principality meanwhile became a district of the province of Anatolia. As these examples show, the old dynasties often acquired a new status as members of the Ottoman provincial elite. It was a position, however, which required them to acknowledge the loss of dynastic lands, and to accept that their appointment to office and the assignment to them of revenues was now dependent on the will of the Ottoman Sultan. By 1500, the four central provinces of the empire, Rumelia, Anatolia, Rum and Karaman, were under direct rule. The Sultan, however, continued to maintain a system of tributary principalities. North of the Danube, Wallachia, Moldavia and the Khanate of the Crimea, territories which Mehmed II had brought under his suzerainty, remained in the control of native dynasties tributary to the Sultan. So, too, did the Kingdom of Hungary after the Battle of Mohacs in 1526. It was only, it seems, the need to counter Habsburg claims to the kingdom and to organize a military frontier against Austria that persuaded Suleiman I to annex part of Hungary as a directly ruled province after the death of the king in 1540. Transylvania, however, remained as a kingdom owing allegiance to the Sultan. By 1550, therefore, Transylvania, Wallachia, Moldavia and the Crimean Khanate remained under the rule of native dynasties who paid tribute to the Sultan. Similarly, a few enclaves under the rule of local lords survived in Turkey and the Arab lands, but these now formed districts within larger provinces. By the mid-16th century, apart from the principalities north of the Danube, all provinces came under the direct rule of the Sultan. 9 The governors-general were all his appointees, and he could remove or transfer them at will. Their term of office was limited, governorships were not hereditary, and no one could serve for life. A governor-general's income was also dependent on the Sultan. On appointment, he received a prebend consisting of a defined parcel of revenues, raised within the boundaries of his province. This grant, which could in some cases rise to more than 1,000,000 akshas a year, put the governors-general among the wealthiest men in the empire. 10 The prebend, however, was dependent on the appointment and, unless he was wealthy in his own right, a governor would have no income when he was out of office. He would also receive other perquisites, but these too were by virtue of the office which, in turn, was dependent on the Sultan. A governor-general, therefore, had no permanency and no territorial base in a province, and no income from it that outlived his tenure. The Turkish word for governor-general is beylerbey, meaning simply lord of lords and apos. There is no early Ottoman source that records this term, but the late 15th century chronicle of Ashik Pasha's aid implies that, in the 14th century, it had the sense of army commander and apos. Specifically, he attaches it to Murat I's commander in Europe, Lala Shaheen, and to his successor, Kara Timurtash. Probably, by 1400, it had acquired the sense of governor-general of a province. This was not, however, so much a change in meaning as an extension, since a major role of a governor-general was to command the troops who held fiefs in his province. In times of war, they would assemble under his standard and fight as a unit in the Sultan's army. However, as a territorial governor, the beylerbey now had wider responsibilities. He played the major role in allocating fiefs in his province, and had a responsibility for maintaining order and dispensing justice. His household, like the Sultan's in the capital, was the political center of the province. The Genoese merchant at the court of Mehmed II, Jacopo da Promontorio, has left a description of the governor-general of Rumelia, dating from 1475, which gives a good account of the functions of an Ottoman governor-general between about 1400 and 1600. The beylerbey of Rumelia has under him 17 captains, each with a following for himself. And beyond this, he has particularly under himself 1,500 fighting men with their own pay, whom he pays from his own funds. He has an income in Rumelia of 32,000 ducats, through various benefits and, furthermore, very profitable perquisites, principally 4,000 ducats from the said captains, and similarly from the abundance of other less important offices, which he grants to whomsoever he wishes. Yet he is obliged, in times of war, to bring with him, at his own expense, the said fighting men, all mounted, 1/3 of them with bow, arrows, cuirass, coat of mail, shield, sword, lance, and iron mace, with 150 horses in horse armor, all in good order, the rest, with bows, arrows, sword, shield, mace and lance, apart from those to whom the senior sometimes grants cuirasses, helmets, bows and coats of mail. He holds court and palace in style, like the Grand Turk, according to his own rank. He imposes sentence of death and of all other matters to all the inhabitants of Rumelia and its provinces de jure and de facto, and everything that he does is approved by the senior without any protest. He maintains by him 2 officers and 2 judges as deputies to administer justice. They have 4,000 ducats of maintenance among the 4 of them, together with profitable perquisites. The office of Governor-General was the most prestigious and the most profitable in the provincial government, and it was from among the governors-general that the Sultan almost always chose his viziers. There was also, it appears, a hierarchy among the governors themselves. The senior was the Governor-General of Rumelia who, from 1536, had the right to sit on the imperial council. Precedence among the remainder, according to Ain Ali, in 1609, followed the order in which the provinces were conquered, although he does not make it clear whether this ranking had anything other than a ceremonial significance. However, before 1650, there was another development. During this period, the practice began of appointing some governors-general with the rank of vizier, a viziral governor, according to the Chancellor. Abdurrahman Pasha in 1676, had command over the governors of adjoining provinces who should have recourse to him and obey his command and appas. Furthermore, when governors-general with vizirates are dismissed from their province, they listen to lawsuits and continue to exercise viziral command until they reach Istanbul and appas.